A medieval wedding could happen without love, without choice, and sometimes without the bride and groom truly knowing each other. For many people living in medieval Europe, marriage was not primarily about romance. It was about survival, land, family alliances, inheritance, and duty. Modern weddings often focus on personal happiness and love stories. Medieval weddings were very different. A young woman might discover that her future husband had already been chosen by her parents. A young man might be expected to marry because his family needed additional land, workers, or stronger social connections. Marriage was one of the most important decisions in medieval life, yet it was not always a decision made by the people getting married. For wealthy families, marriage could be a political tool. A noble father might arrange a marriage that would unite two families, strengthen alliances, or increase wealth. Land was often more important than affection. A successful marriage could increase a family's power for generations. For poor families, the reasons were different but equally practical. Peasant families depended on labor and cooperation to survive. A marriage created a new household and provided additional workers for farms, fields, and daily tasks. Every member of the family contributed to survival. Because life was difficult and uncertain, marriage was often viewed as a necessity rather than a personal choice. Parents usually played a major role in arranging introductions and discussions. Young people certainly experienced attraction and affection, but family approval remained extremely important. In many villages, reputation mattered greatly. Families wanted spouses who were hardworking, trustworthy, healthy, and capable of supporting a household. Love could develop after marriage. In fact, many medieval people expected affection to grow slowly through shared responsibilities and daily life. The idea of marrying purely for romantic love was far less common than it is today. Marriage was seen as the beginning of a partnership built on duty, religion, work, and family obligations. To medieval people, a successful marriage was often measured not by passion but by stability. A couple that worked together, raised children, and survived difficult years was considered successful. This practical view of marriage shaped nearly every part of medieval life and explains why medieval weddings can seem so strange to modern eyes. For most medieval people, finding a husband or wife was not a process driven by modern ideas of dating or romance. There were no dating applications, no social media profiles, and very few opportunities for young people to spend time alone together. Most people spent their lives within a relatively small area. Many peasants rarely traveled farther than a few miles from the village where they were born. As a result, potential marriage partners usually came from nearby communities. Families often knew one another for years before discussing marriage. Parents played an important role in introducing young people and evaluating possible matches. A good reputation mattered enormously. People wanted spouses who were hardworking, honest, healthy, and capable of contributing to family life. In farming communities, physical strength and practical skills were highly valued. A young man who could successfully work the fields and maintain a household was considered desirable. A young woman who could cook, bake, care for children, and manage domestic responsibilities was equally valuable. Marriage was often viewed as a partnership of labor. Both husband and wife were expected to contribute to survival. Because life was difficult, practical considerations frequently outweighed personal preferences. This does not mean medieval people never experienced love. They certainly did. Songs, poems, and stories from the Middle Ages contain countless examples of romance and affection. However, love alone was rarely enough. Families wanted security, they wanted stability, they wanted reassurance that a marriage would improve rather than weaken the household. For wealthy families, these concerns became even more important. Noble marriages were often carefully planned years in advance. Children could be promised to future spouses long before reaching adulthood. Such arrangements help strengthen alliances between powerful families. Land ownership, inheritance rights, political influence, and financial resources all played a role. A noble wedding could reshape relationships between entire regions. For ordinary villagers, marriage negotiations were usually less complicated but still important. Parents often discussed practical matters before approving a union. Would the couple have a place to live? Could they support themselves? Would both families benefit? These questions were taken seriously. Engagements sometimes lasted many months. This gave families time to prepare and gather resources. Although engagement customs varied across Europe, many communities treated engagements almost as seriously as marriage itself. Breaking an engagement could damage reputations and create conflict between families. Religion also played an important role. The Church taught that marriage was a sacred institution. Priests encouraged couples to enter marriage responsibly and with serious intentions. Public announcements were often made before weddings. These announcements helped identify potential objections. If someone believed the marriage violated church rules, concerns could be raised before the ceremony took place. By the time the wedding day arrived, families had often spent months preparing. The future husband and wife understood that marriage would transform every aspect of their lives. It was not simply a celebration. It marked the beginning of adulthood, responsibility, and a lifetime of obligations. The wedding day was one of the most important moments in medieval life. For many people, it marked the transition from youth to adulthood. Although medieval weddings varied depending on region, wealth, and local customs, certain traditions were common across much of Europe. The day often began early. Families and neighbors gathered while final preparations were completed. Clothing was usually the best that the family could afford. Contrary to popular belief, medieval brides did not always wear white dresses. The famous white wedding dress became popular much later. Most brides simply wore their finest clothing. For wealthy women, this might include colorful fabrics, embroidery, jewelry, and decorative head coverings. Poorer brides wore simpler garments but still tried to look their best. The wedding itself was closely connected to religion. By the later Middle Ages, the Church played a central role in regulating marriage. Many ceremonies took place near or inside a church. A priest would oversee the exchange of vows and confirm the union before witnesses. Witnesses were extremely important. Marriage was considered a legal and religious commitment. Having people present helped ensure that the union would be recognized by the community. Without witnesses, disputes could arise later regarding the legitimacy of the marriage. One of the most important moments involved the exchange of consent. Modern people often imagine medieval weddings as elaborate ceremonies filled with long rituals. In reality, the spoken agreement between the couple was often considered the most essential element. The bride and groom publicly declared their intention to marry. These words carried tremendous weight. According to church teachings, mutual consent formed the foundation of a valid marriage. Rings were also used in many regions. Although styles varied, wedding rings symbolized commitment and permanence. The circular shape represented continuity and an unbroken bond. Following the ceremony, congratulations and blessings usually followed. Family members, friends, neighbors, and local villagers participated in the celebration. In small communities, weddings were major social events. They brought people together and provided a welcome break from daily labor. For some villagers, a wedding might be one of the largest gatherings they attended all year. Not every wedding was joyful. Some brides felt anxious. Some grooms worried about supporting a future family. Others entered marriage under pressure from relatives or social expectations. Yet despite these concerns, marriage remained one of the defining milestones of medieval life. As the formal ceremony ended, attention shifted toward celebration. Food, music, dancing, and communal gatherings transformed the wedding from a religious event into a social festival that people would remember for years. After the religious ceremony ended, the celebration truly began. For many medieval people, the wedding feast was the most anticipated part of the entire event. While the church ceremony was important, the feast provided an opportunity for family, friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives to gather together. In small villages, weddings could become some of the largest social events of the year. Daily life in medieval Europe was dominated by work. People spent long hours farming, caring for animals, repairing tools, gathering firewood, and completing countless household tasks. Opportunities for celebration were relatively rare. A wedding offered a welcome break from routine. Food played a central role in these celebrations. The quality of the feast depended heavily on the wealth of the families involved. For poor peasants, the meal might consist of bread, cheese, pottage, vegetables, and ale. For wealthier families, roasted meats, pastries, fish, spices, wine, and expensive ingredients could appear on the table. Even modest wedding feasts represented a significant investment. Families often spent months preparing. Animals might be saved specifically for the celebration. Extra bread would be baked. Ale and wine would be gathered in advance. Guests expected hospitality, and hosts wanted to create a memorable occasion. Music was another essential part of many weddings. Musicians played instruments such as lutes, harps, flutes, pipes, and drums. Songs filled halls, village squares, and manor houses. People danced together for hours. Although medieval dancing differed from modern styles, it served a similar purpose. It brought people together and helped create a joyful atmosphere. Some wedding customs appear quite strange to modern observers. In certain regions, symbolic gifts were exchanged between families. These gifts could represent friendship, loyalty, or financial commitments. In other places, wedding processions moved through villages accompanied by music and celebrations. Neighbors often joined spontaneously. Communities viewed marriage as more than a private matter. A wedding affected the entire village. New households would be created. Future children would eventually become members of the community. Marriage helped ensure social stability. As a result, villagers often felt personally invested in the success of the couple. Many customs were intended to bring good fortune. People worried about illness, crop failures, accidents, and countless other dangers. Life was unpredictable. Special rituals were believed to encourage prosperity, fertility, and happiness. While some of these traditions may seem superstitious today, they reflected genuine hopes and fears. The desire for a successful marriage was universal. Guests frequently offered advice to newlyweds. Older couples shared stories and lessons learned from years of experience. Parents reminded young husbands and wives about their responsibilities. Marriage was celebrated, but it was also taken seriously. Everyone understood that difficult years would eventually come. Bad harvests, disease, harsh winters, and economic hardships could challenge any family. A strong marriage was expected to help people endure these struggles. For wealthy nobles, wedding celebrations could last for several days. Large banquets demonstrated status and power. Guests might travel long distances to attend. Expensive food, entertainment, and decorations displayed wealth to both allies and rivals. A magnificent wedding could strengthen a family's reputation. For ordinary villagers, celebrations were simpler but often more meaningful. Many guests knew each other personally. The atmosphere could feel less formal and more communal. People laughed, sang, danced, shared stories, and enjoyed a rare opportunity to relax. As the feast continued into the evening, candles illuminated halls and cottages. Music echoed through villages. Children played nearby while adults celebrated. For a brief moment, daily worries faded into the background. Yet when the celebration finally ended, a new chapter of life was about to begin. The wedding itself lasted only a day. Marriage would last much longer. For most medieval couples, the wedding day was not the beginning of a fairy tale. In many ways, it was the beginning of hard work. Once the celebrations ended and guests returned home, newly married husbands and wives faced the realities of everyday life. Marriage brought new responsibilities. A husband was generally expected to provide for the household. Depending on his social status, this could involve farming, maintaining livestock, practicing a trade, or managing land. His ability to support a family often determined how successful the marriage would be viewed by others. A wife carried responsibilities that were equally important. She managed many aspects of daily life inside the household: cooking, cleaning, baking bread, preserving food, caring for children, tending gardens, making clothing, spinning wool, and countless other tasks filled her days. Medieval homes required constant labor. Nothing was easy. Water often had to be carried from wells or rivers. Food had to be prepared from scratch. Clothing required hours of work. Even simple household tasks demanded time and effort. For peasant families, husbands and wives frequently worked side by side. Women helped in the fields during planting and harvest seasons. Men sometimes assisted with household duties when necessary. Survival depended on cooperation. A successful household functioned as a team. Children usually arrived soon after marriage. Large families were common. However, medieval parents lived with constant uncertainty. Infant mortality rates were far higher than today. Many children never reached adulthood. This reality shaped family life in profound ways. Parents loved their children deeply, but they also understood that life could be fragile. Religious faith often provided comfort during difficult times. Church teachings influenced many aspects of marriage and family life. Couples were encouraged to remain faithful, support one another, and fulfill their duties. Marriage was considered a lifelong commitment. Divorce, as people understand it today, was generally unavailable. As a result, most couples expected to spend their entire lives together. Not every marriage was happy. Arguments, disagreements, financial stress, and personal conflicts existed just as they do today. Historical records contain stories of difficult relationships, disputes over property, and family tensions. Medieval people were human. They experienced the same emotions that people experience now. Yet many marriages endured because both partners depended on each other. Life was challenging enough without facing it alone. Over time, affection often grew through shared experiences. Couples worked together during harvests. They survived harsh winters. They raised children. They cared for aging relatives. Years of cooperation could create deep bonds that were every bit as meaningful as romantic love. For many medieval husbands and wives, companionship developed gradually. It emerged through ordinary moments rather than grand gestures. A shared meal after a long day, a conversation beside a fireplace, the relief of surviving another difficult season. These experiences form the foundation of countless medieval marriages. As the years passed, medieval marriages changed. The excitement of the wedding day faded into memory, replaced by the routines of daily life. Seasons came and went. Harvests succeeded or failed. Children were born and grew older. Families faced countless challenges together. For many couples, marriage became less about the promises spoken on their wedding day and more about the shared experiences accumulated over decades. Life expectancy in medieval Europe was shorter than it is today, but many people still lived into their 50s, 60s, or even beyond. Those who survived childhood, disease, accidents, and periods of famine could experience long marriages. Years of working side by side often created strong emotional bonds. A husband and wife who had spent decades together knew each other's habits, strengths, weaknesses, and fears. They had survived winters, harvests, illnesses, and personal tragedies. This shared history often became the foundation of companionship. Aging brought new responsibilities. Adult children might leave home and establish their own households. Parents gradually shifted from raising families to helping younger generations. Grandchildren became an important part of life for many older couples. Knowledge and experience were highly valued in medieval communities. Older people often served as advisors within their families. They passed down skills, traditions, recipes, farming techniques, and practical wisdom accumulated over a lifetime. The role of elderly women could be particularly important. Many became respected figures within villages, helping younger mothers, caring for grandchildren, and preserving household knowledge. Older men often continued working as long as their health allowed. Even when physical strength declined, experience remained valuable. Communities relied heavily on practical knowledge. A lifetime spent farming or practicing a trade created expertise that younger generations respected. Not all couples reached old age together. Disease remained one of the greatest dangers of medieval life. Plagues, infections, childbirth complications, and countless illnesses could suddenly separate families. The death of a spouse was a devastating event. Widows and widowers often faced difficult decisions about property, work, finances, and future support. Some remarried. Others spent the rest of their lives alone. Yet, despite these hardships, marriage remained one of the most important institutions in medieval society. It connected families, strengthened communities, and provided stability in an uncertain world. Modern people often imagine the Middle Ages as a distant and unfamiliar time. In many ways it was. Life was harder, medical knowledge was limited, travel was difficult, daily survival required enormous effort. But some experiences remain surprisingly familiar. People still hoped for companionship. They still worried about their children. They still celebrated important milestones. They still searched for security, happiness, and a sense of belonging. Medieval weddings may seem strange to modern eyes. The customs were different, the expectations were different, the world itself was different. Yet beneath the traditions, ceremonies, contracts, and celebrations were ordinary human beings trying to build lives together. Their marriages were shaped by duty, religion, family expectations, and practical necessity. But they were also shaped by friendship, trust, sacrifice, and shared experience. And perhaps that is why medieval weddings continue to fascinate us today. Because despite the centuries that separate us, many of the hopes that people carried into marriage remain surprisingly unchanged.